قرارات الأمم المتحدة فلنقبل بتقسيم فلسطين، ولو أجمع العرب جميعا على أن يرضوا بوجود إسرائيل وبتقسيم فلسطين فلن ندخل معهم في هذا الاتفاق.
Resistance, sacrifice, betrayal. These four Arab leaders dedicated their lives to one cause: defending Palestine. They defied empires, challenged Israel, and reshaped the Middle East. Their names became symbols of defiance. Their voices echoed across the Arab world.
Media, always beside the Israelis. Your baby.
They fought for a cause and were eliminated for it. So who were they? And how did their unwavering support for Palestine lead to their downfall? 24 years ago, on the 26th of May, 2000, Hezbollah's chief secretary, Hassan Nasrallah, arrived in the small Lebanese town of Bint Jbeil, located just a few kilometers from the Israeli frontier. The prior day, Israel had pulled back its forces from southern Lebanon after years of dominance, during which it was persistently attacked by Hezbollah and other factions. Thousands of followers gathered under Hezbollah's yellow flags to witness what would become one of Nasrallah's most well-known speeches. Nasrallah, then 39 years old, stood before the crowd wearing his familiar black turban and brown cloak. Speaking to the Arab world and the oppressed people of Palestine, he proclaimed that despite Israel's nuclear stockpile, it was as weak as a spider's web. The ideas Nasrallah conveyed that day would come to define his perspective in the years that followed, merging Shia beliefs with freedom rhetoric based on the notion that true Islamic resistance could overcome a much mightier foe. Since then, Hezbollah has gone through a deep shift, progressing both as a powerful combat unit and as a political and social giant within the unstable Lebanese nation. As tensions continue to rise, Nasrallah finds himself on the edge of war with Israel, where even a single misfired rocket could spark a larger Middle Eastern conflict. But who is Hassan Nasrallah? How did he rise to power and what shaped his worldview? Born in 1960 in the Burj Hammoud district of East Beirut, Hassan Nasrallah, the eldest of 9 siblings, aimed for religious leadership from an early age. Though his household was not especially devout, young Nasrallah developed a profound passion for Islamic teachings, spending his youth reading the Quran and analyzing religious texts. He asserts to have become fully observant by the age of 9. Nasrallah drew the notice of a local scholar who urged him to pursue further religious education abroad. The next year, after finishing high school, Nasrallah journeyed to Najaf, Iraq, to enroll in a Shia religious school. It was there that he first meets Sayyid Abbas Musawi, with whom he would later establish Hezbollah. In 1978, as Iraq expelled hundreds of Lebanese theology students, Nasrallah and Musawi were compelled to return to Lebanon. Back home, Musawi founded a religious institute where Nasrallah both instructed and continued his education. His fiery sermons attracted an expanding group of Shia supporters, many of whom joined him in organizing armed defiance against the Israeli invasion of Lebanon in 1982. In June 1982, Israel attacked Lebanon in reaction to an assassination attempt on Shlomo Argov, Israel's representative to the United Kingdom, by a breakaway unit of the Palestine Liberation Organization. Israel's goal was to drive out the PLO and set up a cooperative administration in Lebanon. The invasion resulted in a 10-week blockade of Beirut, causing the deaths of at least 20,000 Lebanese and Palestinians, mostly civilians, and over 370 Israelis, primarily military troops. During this period, Hezbollah emerged as an essential actor in the conflict. Initially created in response to the Israeli offensive, Hezbollah initiated a guerrilla campaign aimed at driving Israel out of Lebanon, portraying this battle as a prelude to the liberation of Palestine. The war escalated with a sequence of strikes credited to Hezbollah, including the bombing of the U.S. Embassy in Lebanon in April 1983, which claimed the lives of at least 17 Americans and more than 30 Lebanese citizens. By the summer of 1985, Israel had pulled out from much of southern Lebanon, but still maintained control over several settlements near the frontier. Hezbollah persisted in its strikes on Israeli posts in the so-called security belt, further cementing its image as a fierce resistance movement. As Hezbollah's military strength grew, Nasrallah set himself apart as a capable guerrilla leader. In 1985, he was designated head of Hezbollah's executive board and a member of its Shura Council, the group's top decision-making entity. His connections to Iran strengthened as he frequently visited the nation for guidance on the ongoing Iran-Iraq conflict, a role he was assigned due to his fluency in Persian. During this time, Nasrallah became a strong proponent of incorporating Lebanon into a wider Islamic state under the rule of Iran's supreme authority. Yet he asserted Hezbollah would only pursue this course if it had the endorsement of Lebanon's majority, an improbable scenario given the country's large Sunni and Christian populations. By the late 1980s, Nasrallah pushed for a more forceful stance against Israel and the U.S., putting him in disagreement with Hezbollah's leadership. As a result, he was removed and sent to Tehran as the group's delegate. In 1991, Nasrallah returned to Lebanon. Having momentarily softened his hardline position, his rise within Hezbollah persisted until 1992, when he became the group's chief following the killing of his predecessor and mentor, Sayyid Abbas Musawi, in an Israeli helicopter assault. At Musawi's funeral, Nasrallah delivered an intense speech pledging, "We will continue this path, even if we are martyred. All of us, in our houses demolished over our heads, we will not abandon the choice of the Islamic resistance." Nasrallah began the effort of reshaping Hezbollah from a disorganized militia into a political and military powerhouse. He recognized how desperately his Shia followers needed the welfare services they were denied by the Lebanese authorities. Establishing this social aid program was fundamental to Hezbollah's growth and triumph. For underprivileged Lebanese families in the southern towns and city slums, what mattered was not the religious struggle, but rather the meal packages during Ramadan, medical care, and interest-free microloans. This use of social services gave Nasrallah the image of a Lebanese Robin Hood, prepared to take from the wealthy to assist the poor. He skillfully filled the gap left by the frail government, while his followers were willing to overlook Hezbollah's various covert dealings, including the enormous accumulation of arms for local dominance and a future confrontation with Israel. Under Nasrallah's command, Hezbollah obtained extended-range missiles, allowing it to target deeper into northern Israel. In the mid-1990s, Hezbollah intensified its military efforts in the Israeli-occupied sector of southern Lebanon, engaging Israel in a prolonged guerrilla struggle. In May 2000, Israel unilaterally withdrew from southern Lebanon, marking the first time it ended the seizure of an Arab region without a settlement or security deal. This retreat strengthened Nasrallah's assertion that armed resistance was the sole method to reclaim Arab land. Fighting escalated in July 2006 when Hezbollah captured 2 Israeli troops in a border assault, prompting Israel to launch a large-scale military incursion into Lebanon. Hezbollah asserted the abductions were intended to secure bargaining power for the release of Lebanese captives in Israel. The war intensified, with Hezbollah firing over 4,000 missiles into northern Israel. By the conclusion of the 33-day battle, more than 1,200 Lebanese and 160 Israelis had perished, with both factions declaring triumph. Nasrallah's popularity surged again. However, long before this renewed recognition, Nasrallah had been steadily reinforcing his political power. In 1992, he led Hezbollah into Lebanon's first post-Civil War parliamentary elections, where the party secured 12 seats. Under his leadership, Hezbollah has taken part in every parliamentary election since, significantly broadening its role and influence. Under his guidance, Hezbollah developed into the biggest political group in Lebanon's modern history. In the 2018 national elections, it secured more than 340,000 preferential votes, the highest for any party in Lebanon since freedom. This success reinforced Hezbollah's position as a leading power in Lebanon, combining vast political and social sway with a strong armed presence. Militarily, Hezbollah accomplished what many believed unachievable, compelling Israel to retreat from southern Lebanon without an agreement and later battling Israel to a standstill in a full-scale conflict. These victories altered the power structure in the area, making Hezbollah a key figure in Middle Eastern matters. As Hezbollah's power grew, the issue of how it would handle the increasingly unstable setting became more urgent. These concerns were settled on October 7, 2023. Hamas, along with other Palestinian factions, initiated Operation Al-Aqsa Flood, a sudden strike on southern Israel that led to over 1,100 Israeli deaths. Israel's swift announcement of war quickly intensified the fighting, causing disastrous effects as the world observed and speculated how Hezbollah, under Nasrallah's leadership, would react. In an address on November 3, 2023, Nasrallah applauded the Hamas-led mission, calling it a brave, bold, inventive, flawlessly carried-out move deserving of every tribute. He claimed that the strike revealed Israel's weaknesses, but stressed that neither Hezbollah nor any other resistance alliance members had prior awareness of the assault. Hezbollah has shown its backing for Hamas through regular armed operations, launching missiles, shells, rockets, and explosive drones into northern Israel nearly every day. This has triggered counterattacks from Israel, pushing both parties dangerously near to full-scale war, especially after Israel's killing of Fuad Shukr, a top Hezbollah member and part of its original generation. Despite media efforts to portray Nasrallah as a reckless war seeker, his replies have been measured, always with a sharp understanding of the escalation process. His approach seeks to prevent Israeli attacks while steering clear of an all-out battle. The removal of over 60,000 Israeli residents from northern Israel due to Hezbollah strikes has increased stress on Israeli authorities to guarantee their secure return. As the situation intensifies, the world watched anxiously, wondering who would make the first move, Netanyahu or Nasrallah. But in the end, the conflict took a devastating turn. On the night of September 27, 2024, as tensions reached a breaking point, Israeli intelligence carried out a targeted operation deep inside Lebanon. Reports suggest that a small fleet of drones, undetected by Hezbollah's air defenses, hovered over a secure bunker in Beirut's southern suburbs, the heart of Hezbollah's leadership. Multiple precision-guided missiles struck the underground command center. The explosion was so powerful that it shook buildings miles away. For hours, Hezbollah remained silent. Then as dawn broke, the news spread. Hassan Nasrallah was dead. Hezbollah officials first denied the reports, but as more details emerged, it became clear. Nasrallah, the man who had led Hezbollah for over 3 decades, had been assassinated. Israel did not claim responsibility immediately, but high-ranking officials hinted that the operation was years in the making. One senior Israeli figure remarked, he was living on borrowed time. Nasrallah's war with Israel pushed the region to the brink, but he was far from the first Arab leader to stand against Israeli occupation. Decades earlier, another man led the Palestinian cause from the front lines, not with missiles, but with strategy, diplomacy, and relentless defiance.
Yasser Arafat, to come to the rostrum to receive the gold medal and the diploma.
The year was 1995. The speaker was none other than the president of Palestine. Just a year earlier, Yasser Arafat had been awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for his efforts to create peace in the Middle East. Arafat was a relentless leader who dedicated decades to the Palestinian cause. Something many thought impossible. Born in Cairo and raised between Egypt and Jerusalem, Arafat was drawn into the 1948 Arab-Israeli War. Later, as a qualified engineer, he moved to Kuwait for work. In the late 1950s, he founded the Fatah movement, determined to rally displaced Palestinians and take up arms. His group launched attacks from Arab territories, but it was after the 1967 war, when Israel swiftly defeated the armies of Egypt, Syria, and Jordan, that Fatah became central to the Palestinian resistance. By 1969, Arafat and Fatah had taken control of the Palestine Liberation Organization, PLO, effectively asserting Palestinian independence from the influence of regional powers. To draw global attention to their cause, the PLO resorted to violent tactics. But Arafat soon realized that true progress would only come through diplomacy. He had to accept Israel's existence if he wanted the U.S. to mediate peace efforts. The world began to take notice. In 1974, the United Nations recognized the PLO as the sole representative of the Palestinian people. That same year, Arafat, wearing his military uniform, made history as the first leader of a non-state entity to address the UN General Assembly. With the signing of the Oslo Accords, the Palestinian Authority, PA, was formed, and Arafat was elected president in a landslide victory with 83% of the vote. But tensions with Israel quickly escalated. Palestinians accused Israel of failing to uphold its territorial commitments, while Israel blamed Arafat's government for not stopping Hamas from carrying out deadly bomb attacks inside Israel. After the 9/11 attacks, the U.S. launched its global war on terror. The shift in world politics left Arafat increasingly isolated. In March 2002, Israeli forces placed him under virtual house arrest at his Ramallah headquarters. For 2 years, the Muqata compound remained under military siege, cutting him off from the outside world. By October 2004, his health had begun to deteriorate. At first, doctors diagnosed it as the flu, but those around him suspected something far more deadly: poisoning. On October 28th, after weeks of negotiations, his wife Suha was finally allowed to cross into Ramallah. She hadn't seen her husband since 2001, and she would accompany him on what would become his final journey. Arafat was flown by helicopter to Jordan, then transferred to a medically equipped plane bound for France. He believed he would return. Israel had agreed to let him. In Paris, he was admitted to a military hospital, but instead of improving, his condition. 11th, 2004, Yasser Arafat passed away at the age of 75. His exact cause of death was never publicly disclosed. At Suha Arafat's request, no autopsy was performed, leaving the mystery unsolved. 8 years later, a new theory emerged.
Palestinian President Yasser Arafat were exhumed for scientific studies. The Palestinian inquiry gave its conclusions on the Swiss and Russian lab reports, both of which found radioactive substances.
12. Al Jazeera aired allegations that Arafat may have been poisoned. Suha Arafat then requested a formal investigation. In November 2012, Swiss, French, and Russian scientists exhumed Arafat's body. A team of toxicologists examined 75 samples, including personal items like his toothbrush, clothing, and underwear. These were compared with reference items stored for a decade in a controlled environment. Their findings revealed that some personal items contained unusually high levels of polonium-210, raising the possibility that Arafat had been poisoned. Additionally, Arafat did exhibit some symptoms, including vomiting, renal failure, and fatigue, but he showed no signs of hair loss or bone marrow deficiency, symptoms typical of radiation poisoning. Arafat's dream was a free Palestine, but his struggle was shaped by an even larger force. The man who once united the entire Arab world under one vision. A leader so powerful that even after his death, his name still echoes through history. The father of Arab nationalism.
الفقراء ليهم الجنة والفقراء دول ما لهمش نصيب في الدنيا نصيبهم بس في الآخرة.
The year was 1956. Egypt was at a crossroads. Gamal Abdel Nasser, the charismatic leader who had overthrown the monarchy 4 years earlier, stood before his people with a bold declaration: The Suez Canal, a vital waterway linking East and West, would now belong to Egypt. Nasser's journey to this moment was anything but ordinary. Born in 1918 in Alexandria, Nasser grew up witnessing the injustices of British colonial rule. As a young military officer, he played a key role in the 1952 Egyptian Revolution, overthrowing the monarchy and seizing power in 1954. Under his leadership, Egypt became a socialist Arab state with sweeping land reforms aimed at empowering landless peasants. But for Nasser, true independence meant standing up to foreign powers. The Suez Canal, a vital trade route controlled by Britain and France, became the ultimate symbol of colonial exploitation. In 1956, Nasser made a bold move. He nationalized the canal, declaring that its revenues would fund Egypt's future. The West was outraged. In response, Britain, France, and Israel launched a joint invasion, hoping to topple him. But international pressure, particularly from the United States and the Soviet Union, forced the attackers to retreat. This victory made Nasser a hero across the Arab world. His popularity soared, and his vision of pan-Arab unity gained momentum. In 1958, he merged Egypt and Syria into the United Arab Republic, a bold experiment in Arab unity. But the dream was short-lived. Syria withdrew just 3 years later after a military coup. Still, Nasser remained committed to the Palestinian cause. He provided arms, financial aid, and diplomatic support to Palestinian resistance groups. However, his confrontation with Israel would ultimately lead to his biggest failure. In 1967, rising tensions between Israel and its Arab neighbors led to the Six-Day War. Believing the Arab armies were ready, Nasser mobilized his forces. But Israel struck first, destroying Egypt's air force in a surprise attack. Egypt lost the Sinai Peninsula, and Nasser suffered a massive setback. In just 6 days, Nasser's grand ideas of pan-Arabism were crushed. In the aftermath of this military disaster, President Nasser attempted to resign, but popular demonstrations and a vote of confidence by the Egyptian National Assembly persuaded him to remain in office. His decision to remain in power set off a wave of dancing and cheering among the hundreds of thousands of Egyptians who had thronged the streets of Cairo. Unknown to the Egyptian people, President Nasser was very sick. Compounded by the stress of the war, his mild case of diabetes spiraled out of control. By 1969, he was diagnosed with hyperinsulinemia, atherosclerosis, moderate obesity, as well as other chronic conditions. Despite his declining health, Nasser was once again called when a civil war erupted in Jordan between the Palestinian Liberation Organization, PLO, and King Hussein's forces. The conflict, known as Black September, threatened to destabilize the entire region. Determined to prevent an all-out war, Nasser hosted an emergency summit in Cairo, bringing together Arab leaders, including Yasser Arafat and King Hussein, to negotiate peace. The summit was intense, but by the end, a fragile ceasefire was reached. Exhausted delegation to the airport. Then as he returned home, he collapsed. Egyptian state media interrupted regular programming, broadcasting Quranic recitations, a sign that something terrible had happened. That evening, Vice President Anwar Sadat appeared on television, struggling to hold back tears. Gamal Abdel Nasser was dead at 52. His funeral in Cairo was attended by millions, with crowds chanting his name, mourning the loss of the leader who had given them hope and dignity. But while Nasser's dream of a unified Arab world died with him, his legacy as a champion of Palestinian resistance and anti-colonial struggle remains. Nasser's charisma and ambition made him a legend, but power is never without enemies. And while he fought for Arab unity, another leader, one of the most unlikely allies of the Palestinian cause, was rewriting the rules of geopolitics from a golden palace. This Saudi king supported Palestine throughout his life, and not just with words but through actions too, highlighting his unwavering resolve to stand up for what he believed in. The year is 1973, and Saudi Arabia's third monarch, King Faisal bin Abdulaziz, has banned the sale of oil from the Middle East to its ally, the United States, following U.S. President Nixon's request to Congress for over $2 billion worth of aid to Israel during its 1973 war with Egypt and Syria.
ونحن حينما نصارح بسياستنا لا يهمنا أن يزعل الغرب أو أن يتكدر الشرق، لأن الشرق والغرب اتفقوا على هضم حقوق العرب وسلبهم أراضيهم المقدسة.
King Faisal's embargo forced the U.S. to the negotiating table to call upon Israel to return the lands it had seized from Egypt and Syria during the previous 1967 war between them. But this embargo didn't just target the U.S., it also targeted several of Israel's wartime allies, including the UK, Canada, and South Africa. Over the next few years, an international crisis ensued, and a surge in oil prices led to a boom for Saudi Arabia's economy. King Faisal was then able to use these newly acquired riches to send aid to Egypt and Syria during and after the war, as well as to the Palestinian Liberation Organization. The king had been speaking up for Palestine for decades, since plans to partition the nation had been drawn up by Britain and later the UN.
وإذا قبلنا بقرارات الأمم المتحدة فلنقبل بتقسيم فلسطين، ولو أجمع العرب جميعا على أن يرضوا بوجود إسرائيل وبتقسيم فلسطين فلن ندخل معهم في هذا الاتفاق.
King Faisal desired unity among Muslim nations and led the establishment of the Islamic Conference Organization following an arson attack on Masjid al-Aqsa in 1969, which left him deeply troubled.
ماذا ننتظر؟ إن القدس الشريف يناديكم ويستغيث بكم أيها الإخوة لتنقذوه من محنته ومما ابتلي به.
Just 1 year after King Faisal's oil embargo was lifted, he was assassinated in a public meeting by his nephew, who had recently returned to Saudi Arabia after a long stay in the United States. It was reported at the time that the king's nephew had a history of mental illness, but some speculated that his assassination was linked to his continued support for Palestine. King Faisal consistently called on Israel to withdraw from occupied territories, including East Jerusalem, up until his death in 1975.